can't wait.
I'm here to have real conversations, to hear from the people on the front lines of the social justice movement. The time to talk about it is now. It can't wait. Welcome to It Can't Wait. On this episode, I sat down with All-World, All-Pro fullback Tony Richardson to discuss his journey to the NFL and try to walk a mile in his shoes. Let's go. I'm sitting here with my former teammate, my mentor, Triple OG, Tony Richardson. Welcome to It Can't Wait. And this pandemic has been eye-opening. It has shown, economic disparity. It showed the systematic oppression. It showed social injustice. How have you been handling it?
It's one of those things that, it was very disturbing because I feel like, you're home and you see all this stuff on television. And obviously because of the pandemic, you really can't go out. You really can't do too much. It was very disturbing. And I think for me, number one, and I think it's kind of even started, a little bit further back, when they were, when everyone was talking about like kneeling for the flag and things of that nature. And because you think like, okay, we're in 2020, obviously then 2021, and we're still dealing with the same issues. And obviously, I went to school at Auburn. So, the racism that I experienced when I was in college and different things that, we saw as African-American players, the same things that I saw, when I was at Auburn in 1993, 1990, was the exact same things we're seeing on TV now. The situation in Minnesota really hit home for me because I lived in Minnesota. I played for the Vikings. That incident was probably 10 to 15 minutes, away from our stadium. So I'm putting myself into that, really putting myself under that knee because I'm like, okay, what if for some reason I got a counterfeit dollar and I was using it in this location and, and this escalated to be that, and that could have been me under that knee.
You talk about 93 in Alabama, and we know that racism really was prevalent still in the South in 93 when you went down there. How did you deal with that? And what were those conversations like with your parents before they sent their baby off to school?
So it really hit me when I first got to Alabama, and I was young and curious and never knew a lot, didn't really play sports. But I noticed like as I started to play sports and as I started to become a pretty good football player, then I was telling my dad just yesterday, I don't think they ever liked me, but I think they accepted me. You know what I mean? Because I can help the team win.
Exactly. So they didn't respect what you could do for them, not who you were as a person. How do we start this conversation? Because I feel like, everybody's marching. They talking about they want racial equality. And listen, it's not just black people out there, just like it wasn't just black people out there that marched in Selma. But I think a lot of times when people fail to realize it's the only reason we say Black Lives Matter is because we're the only people that feel like ours don't. So how do we start the conversation, even within the locker rooms? Because, those are the leaders in the communities. Those are the ones with the platform and the stage. And I felt like that's maybe what Kaepernick was trying to do, but the messenger is never perfect. How do we keep the message, and not let it get hijacked by other groups?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question, Bart. And it's one of those things that, like you said, I think it's starting a conversation and it's having a conversation because, in a way, I kind of took offense because, when I had people calling me like, hey man, just checking on you, want to let you know your life matters. And I'm like, you know what? My parents told me my life mattered a long time ago. So I didn't need people calling me feeling pity and feeling sorrow. Like, I just want to let you know your life matters. So I was like, no, my parents love me, hug me, told me my life mattered. I know my life mattered. But that's what I think it is, Bart. It's about having a conversation. It's about having the tough conversations and talking. So I think that's what it's about, man. Like I said, I think, Kaepernick really, he was doing the right thing. Like you said, the message got lost. It was never about hating my military because for me personally, I know what that flag means to me. I know how it changed my life. I know my dad fought for it. My dad's a Purple Heart Vietnam veteran. So it was never about the flag. It was about the police brutality. It was about, systemic racism. It was about everything that we deal with, as being an African American. Not only a player, because sometimes for us, we kind of get to skate through it, if that makes sense, because people aren't going to talk to you any kind of way because, you're Bart Scott.
Because they need us. because they need us.
And they're nicer to me because I'm Tony Richardson. Yeah, exactly. So so we don't really deal with that. So everyone's like, dude, how can you experience things like that? Because you're a former athlete, like you have resources, and I'm just like, it ain't even about that. You know what I mean? It's about standing up, because even if I get treated a certain way, that next little kid or the next person in my neighborhood who can't say, hey, I'm a former Jet, it's not going to go the same way for someone else, and obviously we're going to have a situation like we did in Minnesota.
And I appreciate you coming on the show, because we can talk forever, but I tell you what, this was fascinating insight, for a lot of people that didn't know your journey and how you got here, and the things that you deal with and the things that you continue to deal with. I think putting the story out there will give people a greater understanding, because they can say, if Tony Richardson goes through this, then I can only imagine with people that don't have the resources that you have deal with on a day-to-day basis. And it's important that we continue to put our stories and our experiences out there so that we can add credibility to the cause, and that maybe we can have one day liberty and justice for all and equality. It's a tremendous idea, but it can be executed. And to do that, it's going to take all of us, man. So I appreciate you for coming on. It can't wait, because I believe that it can't.
Well, I got tired walking in that mile with Tony Richardson, but I tell you what, it's always informative, and he's always bringing the real. That's what I love about my teammate, Tony. Next up on It Can't Wait, I sit down with Folorunso Fatukasi to discuss the responsibility of the modern-day athlete, not only to his team, but to the community in which supports him. You'll want to listen to this.
I talked to you during the season, but I'm glad we didn't cover these subjects. We were talking about more about football. This previous season, we saw a lot of activity from athletes. What really inspired you guys, or yourself in particular, to kind of step up and have your voices heard?
Well, really the biggest thing was that we felt like enough was enough, and the leaders in the locker room, as well as a few other guys, came together, and we were just like, this is what's heavy on our heart, and we need to talk about this. And the GM, Joe Douglas and Mr. Chris Johnson, and they sat down, they listened to us, and we had several conversations, and it was a moment where it was just like, this is serious. This is something that we've all been noticing, and this is something that we all need to actually talk about.
You grew up in the New York area. I mean, I think it's super fortunate that you get the opportunity to play where you grew up, because you can positively affect the neighborhoods in which you grew up in. But what was life growing up, in New York, and has it changed any from your time as a child?
So one thing I always say about me is I would consider myself a very fortunate person, because I grew up in a stable household. I went to school with some stable people, and for the majority of my life, pretty much all of my life, I stayed out of trouble. I was never in any trouble. But I can't neglect to say that I did see some things, growing up, not necessarily with me, but with other people. I did hear some stories from other people. So even though I never actually experienced it myself, I experienced it through the lens of other people. And I didn't really, truly understand it until I started to get out into the world myself and started to really see that, this is a bigger issue than what people think.
Now, you talk about Mr. Johnson, Woody and Chris, the organization, Jets organization, giving $1 million to initiatives in the New York, and New Jersey surrounding areas. And you're a part of picking those organizations. How did you feel about that? And how excited are you that you guys are able to kind of pump some resources into organizations that's trying to make a difference, and that you're responsible in picking out some of the organizations and some initiatives that can kind of help change the narrative and kind of change, what's going on in our society?
Well, it wasn't just me, a lot of hands were involved in that. But man, it made me feel extremely happy, because they felt like they could take another step in creating a good and positive impact in the lives of people. And seeing their reactions, when we presented them with these donations, it showed that, like, okay, we're headed even more so in another good direction.
I appreciate you giving me the time. We've been waiting for you to come on. It can't wait, because we couldn't wait to get you on and to get your perspective. And what I'm excited about is the fact that, our fans, people that support us, people that, are fans of the NFL, but fans of us in particular, get an opportunity to get a peek behind the curtain, so to speak, on what we deal with and what we're trying to do so that we can kind of start this conversation.
Appreciate you, Bart.
All love, man.
All right, man.
Let's follow Fatukasi.
Great stuff from Tony Richardson and Folorunso Fatukasi.
In the next episode, we'll learn all about the All-Stars Project,
what their initiative is and their impact on the community. Tune in next time on It Can't Wait.